Welcome to Sullivan Cromwell Sidebar, where we talk with our different litigation partners about some of the most interesting legal issues they've seen in their careers and what they're seeing on the horizon. Today, we are joined by Kamil Shields, a partner in the firm's Criminal Defense and Investigations Group. Her practice focuses on investigations and regulatory enforcement proceedings involving public corruption and allegations of bank and wire fraud. Kamil rejoined the firm in 2019 from the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, where she served as an AUSA in the Fraud and Public Corruption section. In her capacity as an Assistant United States Attorney, Kamil served as lead prosecutor in 13 jury trials and investigated and indicted dozens of cases. Kamil has been a partner since 2021. Kamil, it's a great pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you so much, Jay. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, let's just jump right in. Tell me, in the realm of most interesting cases, maybe if you could pick one from the government sector, the public sector, and one from your time at S&C in the private sector, talk a little bit about the most interesting cases you've dealt with.
So I'll start with a case that I worked on when I was in the government. As you noted, I was a lawyer or a prosecutor in the fraud and public corruption sections, and probably one of my most interesting cases was a public corruption matter. It was one that got a bit of attention at the time, pretty sensitive matter. And I think that because it was a matter involving a public official, it was really important to understand the full landscape, to really get a complete picture of what the allegations were, what the facts were, who was involved, to be able to come up with a prosecution theory and think about what it meant to be a prosecutor advancing that matter and whether or not the Department of Justice should proceed with it. And I think that that's a lesson that I've taken to my experience in private practice. When I returned to the firm, I was pretty lucky to immediately get staffed on a matter involving an individual. And I think that individual cases have challenges that are different than a corporate case. I think with an individual, they are, when they're faced with, and in this matter, there were a number of inquiries from both Congress, state AGs, the department, it feels very personal. And it's important when you're advising an individual, this is true in the corporate setting, but particularly because it is so personal for an individual, to get a sense of the story, to get the complete picture so you can properly advise your client. And walking this client through the various inquiries, talking about these issues with the client who felt like it was personal and also was making business decisions in connection with the inquiries, it reminded me so much of my approach when I was in government, which is that you have to be able to understand everyone's story in order to be the best advocate for either the Department of Justice or for your client.
You know, that's so well said. The law may be the same, but the landscape matters, and it can so inform your approach. It's refreshing to hear that somebody who's been in the government and recognizes the judgments that need to be made and whether to bring a case or not, and brings that perspective when advising individual clients and corporations. That leads me into an area of S&C that I like so much, which is we refer to it as a generalist approach, but it's the ability to draw on resources that have expertise in many different areas. And I think you alluded to this a little bit in getting to the landscape. Talk about how you use the resources at S&C of your colleagues, your breadth of experience to inform your practice.
Well, I think one of the great things about being that advisor, as I said, is understanding the client and understanding the business. So while one of my most interesting cases have been in with respect to the representation of an individual, I have a number of different corporate clients. And one of the great things about S&C is that we have diverse clients. We have clients that are obviously in the financial and banking sector, but one of my favorite clients is a client that is a public utility in the Midwest. And it's incredibly important to understand the client's business to be able to advocate for that client. So you have to be able to talk about why it is that this state AG inquiry or this Department of Justice inquiry, how that affects the client's business and the consequences of that. So being able to draw on colleagues that have that energy background. Also, for this client, there has been civil litigation as well. So working with my civil colleagues in terms of defending the client in regulatory matters, it's important that my defense be informed by the civil consequences. So I think the generalist model that we have, that interdisciplinary approach, is important. I also think that I consider myself a generalist just based on my clients. As I said, I'm not somebody who has defended largely banks. I've had the opportunity to have many different clients while at S&C, and all of those experiences inform my advocacy, I think, in a really effective way. I know that we talk about crisis management. I really do feel lucky because I think that I have a crisis management practice. I have a practice where I have diverse clients with diverse needs, and all of them are turning to Sullivan Cromwell and turning to me. And that feels like an amazing, and I feel very lucky to have that position, to be that kind of advisor.
Yeah, I've seen your work, and you're such an excellent crisis manager. And it's such an important...
Jay, that's so kind.
Well, it's true. And it's such an important skill. But there's another skill that I think is equally important, which is avoiding the crisis in the first place by understanding where the law is going and where risk is coming from in the future. Talk a little bit about what high-level developments you think clients should be thinking about or have their eye on.
I mean, well, obviously, we're speaking in an interesting time because we are post-election. And I think that a lot of folks are thinking about what might be the enforcement priorities of an administration under President Trump. I think that generally there's a sense that there's going to be less regulation. There's obviously speculation about what that means. But I think that right now people are just wondering what will be those enforcement priorities. One thing that I think that we have seen that's playing out already is I think you're going to have a lot more state AG litigation. We've heard that state AGs are broadening their enforcement remit. We've heard some folks who are saying that we're going to step into roles where there might be less. And I don't think we know what will happen, but it's suspected that there will be less enforcement. So for instance, antitrust, I think we're going to see a lot more state AG activity there, consumer protection. And so one of the things that I have had the experience at S&C is navigating both enforcement by the federal government, but also state AG enforcement. I've had both civil and criminal matters involving state AGs. And you've also seen state AGs that are coming together. So numerous states that are addressing consumer protection issues, regulatory issues. So if I am our clients, I think that everyone is speculating about what or what not the federal government might be doing, but thinking about what the states are doing and taking a look at where these entities are regulated. Are there areas that a state AG could have questions about? And what are the next steps in being prepared there? I think it's a lot of the same kind of questions, though, making sure that when you're looking at what your various products are, what your business is, being thoughtful about what are regulatory areas that someone could come asking about and being ready, I think, having a plan.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we are going to see more active state AGs. And an open question is just what scope of authority do they have? Are state AGs allowed to act as de facto federal regulators? And we'll see that unfold. It's one of certainly the questions our clients should have on their minds. And explaining something like that to clients really requires a good working relationship. What do you do to foster a good working relationship with your clients?
Well, one thing is I really do feel like I have been schooled by some of the best. I've had the opportunity to work with some really incredible litigators here who do a very good job of talking to a client. And what that means is and I think we touched on this previously, understanding the client's business. You can only be a trusted advisor if you know what you're talking about. And that means that before any matter, what does this client do? What are the various risk areas? What are the areas of concern? Again, for a public utility, for this client, who are their customers and how does that impact their business decision making? So I think being able to speak about the business is important. I think also being able to say, these are issues that I may have confronted before, Or this is also what your enforcement lawyer might be thinking. I've had the opportunity to work in government. I've been on the other side. So if I'm sitting in the shoes of the Assistant Attorney General or the Assistant United States Attorney, what are they thinking? And then being able to explain that to the client and say that this is not my perspective, but this is what the person on the other side might be thinking. And this is how you want to talk to them. Because at the end of the day, part of what I consider my practice as someone that does crisis management work is being able to talk to both the client, but also being able to talk to the regulator. And the way that you talk to people, the way that you get them to trust them is that we're not enemies. We're here trying to make sure that the dialogue between client and enforcement attorney or regulator, that we're speaking the same language. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with, and I definitely have regularly disagreed with prosecutors, with assistant attorney generals from their perspective, but being able to say, I know that this is what you may be thinking, but this is wrong. And the way to do that is to be able to explain it from the client's perspective. So that's, I think, how you build trust, understanding where someone is coming from, saying that this is why someone on the other side may or may not agree, but let's figure out how to have that dialogue and have that conversation so it's a result that works for the client.
That's great advice. And it really segues into my final question, which is, what advice do you have for associates on how to be effective? Maybe I can ask you to pivot to just one more thing, because I think you did a great job explaining how to develop a client relationship that's one of trust and understanding and engagement. But maybe just a different tip for associates who are looking to grow their career and maybe be Kamil Shields someday.
Well, there are other really good examples, including maybe being Jay Clayton someday, or Bob Giffer, Scott Miller, Sharon Nellis, Karen Seymour, so many examples. What I would say is, and this is something that I learned both at S&C, I actually learned it at S&C, and I think it allowed me to be a successful AUSA, is really taking ownership. You're not just a part of a matter, this is your matter. And I know that for junior associates and mid-level associates, a lot of them may feel like, well, what am I doing? How does it lend itself to the overall project? Take ownership of your piece. Know what you are doing. So then when somebody who is senior or the client reaches out to you, you can project confidence and understanding. I think that is the biggest thing. I think so many times people feel like, well, what is my little bit? How does that work? It's part of an overall strategy. It's part of an overall approach with a client. And that's a lesson that I took when I was a prosecutor, because in my cases, sometimes I started off where I was the only prosecutor on the matter. But as my cases became more complex, I was part of a team. And it was important for me to take ownership of my piece, because my piece was incredibly important to the whole.
Fabulous. Well, Kamil, thank you for joining us on S&C Sidebar. It's been my great pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you for taking the time.